Dr. Chiwike Uba, a development economist, and Dr. Anthony Chibo, an international economic strategist and CEO, African Socio-Cultural Development Foundation, join us this morning to discuss implications of the figures in the 2022 budget. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Let me begin with you, Dr. Chibo. Well, it's not an elephant in the room. It's big, and it cannot be ignored. And that's the fact that, on the one hand, there is increased borrowing, and on the other hand, people are saying it is unsustainable, and yet it'll seem like we spend a lot more on recurrent expenditure as opposed to investing to produce. What's your standpoint?
Thank you for having me, first of all. If a country, it's a well-known fact, okay, that if a country, any nation is going to go forward, if it's going to go towards economic development, it has to produce, it has to manufacture. It's encouraging that a country must invest. All investment must be geared towards manufacturing, production, and production. Economic development, which I'm more interested in than economic growth, is predicated on producing what is taxable. Economic activity increasing, and that economic activity contains production and manufacturing of goods and services that are replaceable of imports and itself exportable. So, you know, all expenditure must be focused on that.
Do you see that? Do you even see us in that trajectory? Or do you see us in that trajectory, prioritizing expenditure for production? Because over the years, what we see is just maintain status quo and manage as opposed to lead.
My straight answer to you is no. I don't see us in that trajectory. I don't. I think with a little bit of advice, we could be on that trajectory. But for now, it's obvious that we are not in that trajectory. It's obvious. Okay, listen. Right now, it's obvious that, and it's been said, that we do not have enough revenue for government to carry out their duties. We are borrowing, yes. We are borrowing to sustain government expenditure, as it were. One of the things I would like to highlight is that if we're going to borrow, then we must be investing in production. We must be investing in all sorts of innovation to increase economic activity. Why? Because production, economic activity, and when I say production, I mean goods and services, and the transactions are taxable. And when you can increase the amount of economic activity in your country, your revenue is by knock-off effect going to go up. So I don't see us in that trajectory, but I don't see us too far away from getting to there with a little
but
bit
the authorities have said that that is what they are doing, and as a matter of fact, those borrowings are part of what has made capital available for us to spend our way out of recession.
Okay. I looked for, okay, you see, the bone of the pivotal problem we're having now is a downturn or a lack of government revenue. The people that are against borrowing give the reasons that we don't have enough revenue to pay back. When you look at our debt servicing to revenue ratio, it's alarming. Yes, government herself says that they don't have enough revenue, and that's why they're borrowing. So the pivotal thing here is revenue, the lack of generation of revenue. Now, I looked at, I looked at several write-ups to find out what exactly is the blueprint for an increase in revenue. And what I could find, I stand to be corrected though, what I could find was that government says that we are going to, through administrative reforms in excise and taxes, revenue is expected to increase, and they want to increase it from what it's about now, 8 to about 15% by 2025. Good, very good. But I don't see that, I don't see anywhere, I could be wrong, but I don't see an entrepreneurial emphasis on what should be done and what is being done on increasing revenue. Maybe because I'm an economic strategist, I feel there is more that could be done. There's a ton of ideas that could be done. So I don't see it. I see, okay, if you look at the budget right now, the three sectors that got the most vote was, I think, education, defense, naturally defense, education, and forgotten the third one. My opinion would have been, there should have been a sectorial development investment in power. Why? Because of the production thing again. You're not going to produce anything if you don't have power. And we do not have power. I know we've tried and tried and tried over time to resolve our power issue. But listen, if it's not resolved, then it's not resolved. And if it's not resolved, you're not going to produce. You're not going to attract people that want to produce and manufacture. And if you don't produce and manufacture, you're in trouble. You're not going to get your currency where it's supposed to be. You're going to remain an importation country. And that's not good.
Okay. Well, Dr. Oba, I don't know where which side of the divide you would place yourself in all of this conversation that we are having. But let me begin with you on this one. There were a couple of deficits pointed out by the president in the budget speech that he presented to the National Assembly. For non-oil revenue, we had a shortfall of 34% of the projection of the budget as of July this year, and something in the region of 50% less than expected of revenue from the oil sector itself. And now, of course, there will be assumptions, there are assumptions in this budget as well, especially concerning oil revenue and all those other issues. Where do you see us going with this budget?
Well, thank you for having me again this morning. With respect to the projections that the government has made, most especially in the oil revenue projection, you see the projections that we are projecting to have produce 1.88 million barrels of oil per day. When in 2021, the average as at August, given the data presented by the Honorable Minister, it has hovered between 1.55 to 1.60. And you find out that, yes, the benchmark, oil benchmark may be realizable, as I said recently, but the production output is way beyond what it should be. So for me personally, that is being over ambitious and also leading us to also what we're experiencing in 2021 budget, which is very unrealistic. On the non-oil sector, recently, if you check the statistics also, we have done better in the non-oil sector, which primarily is driven by the private sector, which also brings us to the point that we need to grow the private sector, get them to play more in the economy in order to drive the kind of development that we need. So for non-oil sector, we might do better, but overall, I don't see our revenue hitting up to 10.13 trillion as have been projected. It's not possible, given what we have. I'm also, given that the tax revenue has increased in the first quarter of the year. It's a short-run approach. People will hit back. People pay tax based on revenue, based on production. We have seen that production and even the productivity in the private sector is also going back. Insecurity is on the increase and all that. And people are no longer doing as much as they have done in the first quarter of the year. And from next year, we are entering elections, campaigns and all that to start. So the implication is also that we might have a further reduction in non-oil sector revenue going forward. Yes, so much has been budgeted for defense, security, and all that. But we've seen also that has been the trajectory over the years. Whereas we are budgeting more for on security, we have seen that insecurity is also on the rise. So overall, I believe that is the revenue projection is one that is not realizable. We to hover between 4 to 5 trillion naira at
Well,
most.
well, Dr. Ba, just a quick one on something that you just said now. You talked about the budget to security, for security and defense, simply because insecurity is quite high. But there are those who also believe that the main catalyst for insecurity is poverty. I mean, and the belief is that if we increase our economic capacity, increase the capacity for people to produce, to earn money, get jobs, provide employment, and all those things, that insecurity would naturally, settle significantly.
Yeah, I agree with that opinion. Actually, if you create jobs, people get busier, and the propensity to get involved in crimes and all that gets reduced. Now, if you look at the budget, the details that have been released, even though I've not gone through it, education got just 5%. Defense got 15% of the budget, infrastructure got 8.9%, and social development got 5.8%. Now, the big question, we discussed this issue last year also. The social security or social investment money, if you look at the amount, 863 billion naira, I am not saying it's not good to give people money, dash money. But the issue is that you have to do a cost-benefit analysis to determine whether dashing money is the best approach to dealing with the increasing poverty in the land. What happens if we create, using private sector players that have been determined to be doing the right work, to create industries within the localities? It could be at local government levels. When that happens, what will happen is that we create the kind of job that we need that will get people busy. Secondly, education is very important, the basic education. People get into crime also because they value their lives less. And that is also a function of how well they are educated. And we are playing with education. I was just running through the figures while waiting to join this event. And I also observed that the government in 2022 also has budgeted huge sums of money to agencies that are doing little or nothing for the development of the country. And I keep asking, when you have a multiplicity of agencies, government agencies, that every year they got money, pay salaries without any other thing, what do we intend to achieve? For instance, I just discovered that an agency they call the National Agency for Science and Engineering and all that was the budget for salaries was 54 billion naira. The big question, I'm just knowing about them this morning. What have we achieved in engineering and science and technology over the years? National Atomic Energy Commission also got a large sum of money. If you go through that budget, you will see a lot of deficits arising from these agencies that have done little or nothing to jumpstart our economy. In my recently, I asked, why do we have multiplicity of agencies even for development? We have the infrastructure concession and regulatory agency. We have the development bank. We have part of industry and all this stuff. And annually, we budget huge sums of more money for these agencies. Yet, the PPP vehicle that would have facilitated private sector investments in some of these infrastructure development are not there. And we keep budgeting money. Why don't you deploy funds from those kinds of agencies and put put them where they will have more impacts on economic development. I keep using the word the development instead of growth for obvious reasons. Sometimes we have this GDP growth and people are clapping. For me, those are bubble growth that has little or no impact on the overall well-being of our people. It's like one who has always bought aircraft, pack them at the tarmac, and borrow money to fuel those aircraft. Unlike one who will buy an aircraft and put it into productive use, he will still fly the same aircraft and will still make money from those kinds of investments. For now, we are just doing, spending money without looking at the other hand of it. Asking ourselves, it go better for you or go better for you.
And I'm speaking about blocking or addressing those leakages. I mean, part of what was said is that removal of subsidies was part of the overall measure at addressing these leakages that we have. How do you see that playing out? Mr. Chibo, that's for you.
Yeah, you see, if you ask me right now, what is okay? First of all, I am more concerned on ensuring that government revenue increases, and the number one thing, or at least one of the top things I would recommend, is to block the leakages. And the first thing I would do or recommend is to remove fuel subsidies. It's taking a whole chunk of government revenue. Now, if that is going to be so, any professional advice to any company or any country that says it's losing revenue or it's not getting as much revenue as it needs to spend, the first professional advice you would give such a country is to cut down expenditure. And I would suggest along that lines that cutting down, when we say expenditure, we mean government expenditure, the amount of money government is spending on government. And the first thing I would do is to cut down the amount of money government is spending on public appointed servants and elected public servants. Why? Because it now gives you the moral authority down the road to remove something like fuel subsidies, which is a very delicate subject matter, and I understand hasn't been done because it could cause upheaval. But if you start, if I was to advise strategy, if you start by reducing the cost of government, then you have the moral standing down the road to do that. So increase of revenue is so important. Now, plugging the leakages. Plugging the leakages in any government or in any society needs a cultural change. We can't run away from that. I love economics. I'm an economist. I love economics, and economics is a very powerful tool. But economics does not explain all human behavior. But guess what does? Culture, especially in this case. The economic figures don't add up because the culture provides a lot of leakages to your sincere input, your sincere investment in getting things done. So if your sincere investment in infrastructure is going to yield what the desired result, you must plug the leakages. And the only way you're going to plug the leakages is to
Dr. Chibo, just a second.
I'm sorry, I was hearing myself.
No, go ahead. I mean, go ahead.
Yeah.
You wanted to say, how do we plug the leakages?
Yeah, the leakages, you have to change culture. You see, each time you institute an anti-corruption drive, what you're trying to do is to enforce a culture change. Because it means that there is an innate culture that is making what you put into all economic plans not to yield. And so you are stopping people, or you're stopping the people from the culture of diverting what was supposed to be for a particular project to another. That's a culture change.
I wanted to ask you,
anti-corruption is a culture change.
I wanted to ask you what purpose the Auditor General's report over the years could have served in blocking the leakages. there has been no consequence for, those who have been indicted in the reports over the years. Nothing has been done. And it is supposed, the Auditor General's report is supposed to be a strong instrument to fight corruption, stem the tide of corruption, block all of these leakages. But it would seem like nothing is happening in that regard.
Well, see, Ayo, look, it's economic fact that you cannot continue to put water in a basket that is leaking. You are not going to go anywhere economically if you do that. We have to decide as a people to change our culture. And the government it has to decide to enforce that change of culture. Okay. If not, there is nothing we're going to talk about today.
All right.
The figures, the assumptions, the appropriations that is going to actually yield results.
All right, just if you can talk about this briefly as we wind down. Pardon me, Dr. Chibo. States,
yes,
they equally have budgets. What role or how should we approach the function, the essence of states also having their own budgets?
You see, states, I dare say local governments, but you asked me about states, must be entrepreneurial in budgeting and spending. What do I mean by entrepreneurial? You know who an entrepreneur, what an entrepreneur is? Somebody that designs, invests, and plans, and invests towards expecting certain results out. And that result is profit for an entrepreneur. In the terms of government now, that result will be revenue. Revenue and, of course, creation of jobs and economic development for the people. Every state is duty-bound to operate in this way. So you use your local resources and entrepreneurially think of what raises your revenue. Revenue, revenue, revenue.
Okay.
Now, guess what? If you have raised your revenue, you now apply it towards economic development. But I am saying that currently, if you apply increased revenue towards economic development, you will not get the yielded results because the culture will not allow it. So we need to decide as a people, what is it that we want? Do we really want to economically develop? Because you know what? We're talking about figures. I'm very uncomfortable talking about economic growth figures because they do not represent anything to the common man.
Okay.
You could have an economic growth of 4.2%, 6.6%, and you are witnesses to the fact that the common man doesn't feel it because there is a difference between economic growth figures represented by GDP, okay, and economic development.
Okay, well, Dr. Chibo,
representative of the quality of health.
Yeah. Well, so many issues to take on this, but we've run completely out of time. Let me quickly take the closing comments of Dr. Chiwike Uba on this issue. You referenced the PPP the other time. What must we do if the private sector is going to play a significant role in the economic development that you and Dr. Chibo have highlighted earlier?
Well, there must be, let me also toe the line of Dr. Chibo earlier on. We need to have a mindset shift in the mindset as a government to encourage the private sector, making the environment more friendly for them to play. Now, there's a question I wanted to respond to before now in terms of how to block the leakages. These things are continuing just as a result of inadequate public consultation in government processes. During budgeting, when these reports are released, how do we get the public know about them?
Oh dear. Seems that that's a good place to leave it, one might say. Sincere apologies that had to happen. Dr. Chiwike Uba is a development economist as well as Dr. Anthony Chibo. Thank you, gentlemen, for being a part of our conversation this morning.